All right, everyone, time for the big story of the day, which is electoral fraud, election interference, the real kind of election interference as opposed to the fake, Russia bullshit that Mueller's going to probably blow out of the water fairly soon. It was funny because the other day there was one report from like one of these tertiary groups like, oh, Mueller's preparing to indict a bunch of people. And it's like, oh, says someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, some former CIA analyst. It's like a total leftist says that he's getting ready to indict people. Dude, put that shit in the Daily Wire or something. It'd be more suited to some place that's built off hyperbole. Put it in Vox or Salon. Keep it out of the lamestream networks because you're helping to kill them off faster. You should start a YouTube channel. It'd be funny. You'd be on the weird side of YouTube making those claims, and you're like a total anti-Trump leftist. Very funny. Broward County in Florida. Lots of outstanding votes there. Oh, and the election's being overseen in part by a former Clinton lawyer who's already gotten in trouble for destroying ballots improperly. Yeah, there's nothing to see here, folks. Voter fraud doesn't exist. See, the problem is, those Democrats aren't realizing. This is Florida. It's so corrupt, it's like a whole other country. Like the Texas slogan there. Florida is legendary when it comes to election shenanigans. Do you not remember the 2000 election? And the recount effort and all the problems that happened then? Are you fucking high? You don't think that there's any fraud that goes on in Florida's election system? I've got a suggestion. Broward County shouldn't even be allowed to oversee its own elections until it's capable of cleaning up its act. The fact that the overseer of elections in general themselves is someone who a judge already said improperly destroyed ballots and magically avoided any jail time for election interference for that, the fact that that's the case should give us pause. And Rick Scott's already suing, and the U.S. government is suing Florida. Rick Scott's suing Broward County. I think Broward County's, the lawyers there are refusing to go along with a judge's order to deliver certain information, like as of yesterday by 7 p.m. They're literally, they should be held in contempt and be thrown in a cell. They're ignoring the judge's lawful order with regards to this. Saying deliver, I can't remember exactly what info was, some of the voter rolls or something. By 7 p.m. we need this info. You should take you 10 minutes to compile it, fucking email it over. They refuse. Well, why would you refuse if it's going to take you 10, 15 minutes out of your day? Like, you're so fucking hard-pressed. How many outstanding ballots are we talking about? Is it more than the population of the county itself? I'll bet you anything it is. Here's the thing. You have one county that perennially holds back its results, and then always ends up with a really, really weird result that statistically, when modeled against the other counties in Florida, is completely off to one side. This was shown, they did a graphic of it. They had one county where there were like 27 people voting. That was the other outlier on the other side. And it showed like, I think, proportion of late ballots by county in Florida. And there's a fairly good general scatter. It looks like a little diamond or circle or something. It's a fairly regular looking mark. And then Broward County's way off to the side. It's like the one pellet that came out of your shotgun sideways. Just it happened to hit the wrong atom and spin just the wrong way and went way off and hit your neighbor's car. That's basically what's happening here. Broward County is legendary for corruption. But, think of this. There's also the ongoing effort in Arizona. And some people are like, well, Sinema's up. You get a lot of, late urban ballots. They're expecting she has an advantage now. That does not require voter fraud. The fact that this is happening in Arizona is a function of their screwy voting system, whereby everything is all mail or some crazy shit like that. It's just going to take them days to count, and this has happened before. I wouldn't be surprised if that flips Arizona. By the way, that still puts the Republicans at 53 within my spread. The special election is in a deep red state. That's going to favor the Republicans heavily. Republicans get a 52nd. And then Florida. Bill Nelson, I think, already conceded, didn't he? I know that Gillum conceded. Didn't Bill Nelson also already officially concede? Florida's gone Republican, and the fact is, if Broward County were to flip the result, and it's not necessarily going to happen anyway, it would be so in question that the Florida Supreme Court would probably have to get involved. There's going to be an automatic full recount of every vote. You're going to get a different number, and it's going to be chaos. And once again, Florida has this problem. I would think that the people of Florida would eventually get tired of being discussed every fucking election in the context of having totally corrupt officials overseeing the election effort. I would think that eventually people in Florida would say enough is fucking enough. Broward County's election should be overseen directly by the state of Florida, not by local officials, because they're clearly not capable. And Florida should have federal officials overseeing the election efforts there on a hypersensitive level, because it's obvious there's some systemic corruption there too. When you have a state that's virtually 50-50, election after election, the Gillum and DeSantis race, virtually 50-50. Nelson and Rick Scott, virtually 50-50. When you have a state with that many electoral votes for presidential elections, and that close of races domestically for governor, for who's the senator, who's the representative, and half of the counties in the middle of the state of Florida are basically 50-50. Anything from Tampa to Orlando, that hyper-competitive region that's always so important. When you have so much importance in such a small area, the risk of getting caught out being fraudulent, interfering in the election, becomes less than the reward for doing so. That's Democrats, Republicans, anyone else with a vested interest. I'm sure that there are probably cartel members that pay off people in Central Florida during elections to get someone elected that they want. Some official says, hey, I'll let a couple of your buddies out here, they basically serve their time. I'll give them, some leniency. I'll commute their sentences. But you're going to have to deliver, some of these ballots. Here's the basic spreadsheet. Print some of these out, fill them out, and get them ready on a truck. And then we've got that one instance there. It looked like in Broward County. Someone recorded this. I wonder if anyone can vouch for the authenticity. It looked like they had the sort of armored car that they typically load the voting containers into. It's like a little machine. You put the ballot in. They have that, and then it looked like they were loading some of them into a pickup truck. Now, if you don't have room, there are too many ballots, so we can't fit them all in there. Okay, there are certain criteria for collecting and moving and tabulating votes that are supposed to be in place anywhere in the country. There are certain election standards that you're held to because of the necessity of having a secure election, because otherwise people's faith in the Republic tends to be a little bit less when they think that their vote genuinely doesn't count. I suppose the people of Florida are right to think that. Absolutely. The place where your vote should count the most, because it's going to be a 50-50 fucking result, is the place where technically it counts the least because of systemic corruption. And then we've got people on the left, and they're hopeful that Broward County is going to return favorable results for the Democrats. So because of that, they're ignoring the fact that it's obviously fishy and that there were voter fraud did happen there in that county, along with the official who's currently overseeing it anyway, the Clinton lawyer. We know that happened. A judge found that that had happened. And yet they're still saying there's no such thing as voter fraud. Look the other way. No, there is voter fraud. It may not be a systemic national problem. I think that's a perennial thing that the Republicans dredge up to increase turnout, the same as the Democrats dredge up Roe v. Wade as though it wasn't a settled issue. This happens when you have partisan politics. But in Florida, voter fraud is very real. From the 2000 election on, every election there's been fucking crooked. It's always close, and it's always a little bit screwy in Broward County, and all of these same officials and lawyers that are crooked, and we know they're crooked, seem to be involved time and time again. Yes, we definitely need people to keep a close eye out for any shenanigans there. As far as Arizona, it's possible. But I would say less likely that there's any actual rigging going on. See, look, if you want election interference, look at Florida. If Russia wants to steal an election, they're not going to waste their time buying votes with Facebook ads in Michigan. They're a target to Florida, dude. They'll have to compete with some coke cartels and deep state agents and the entrenched, corrupt establishment there, I guess. Maybe that's why they didn't bother. They're like, hey, it's so corrupt there, there's nothing we can do. Look, these Floridians, they're hardcore. Like, leave them alone. That's about all. Peace out.